Hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter. The orbital hub of Sidonia Prime never truly slept. From a distance, it looked like a sprawling city suspended in the void above the desert world of Nereus. Its towers glowing with a haze of neon blues and golds. Its docking bays alive with the steady pulse of incoming freighters. Inside, the immigration concourse was a wall of sound and light metal detectors humming. Holographic signs flashing in a dozen languages. The murmur of impatient travelers layered over the throb of engines in the docking rings. Among the endless shuffle of bodies was Alara Quinn. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself with the kind of unshakable confidence that made her look untouchable. A battered flight jacket hung over her shoulders, dark hair pulled back in a careless braid, and her boots clanged with every step like she owned the deck plates. She had the tired, sharp-eyed look of a cargo pilot who'd seen too many star systems and not enough sleep. And yet, there was a spark in her, the kind of spark that said she'd laugh at danger, argue with bureaucracy, and keep walking even if the floor caved in. All she wanted that evening was simple. A stamp on her papers, a room at whatever hotel still had vacancies, and maybe, if she was lucky, a hot drink that didn't taste recycled. She slid into the immigration line, watching the scanners cycle one traveler after another. Weapons check first, green light, move along. Biological check second, heartbeat, breath, brainwave. Routine, boring, predictable. When her turn came, the weapons scanner sang its cheerful tune, a wave of emerald light sweeping across her body. A holographic display popped up. No weapons detected. Proceed. She smirked and stepped aside, muttering, glad somebody thinks I'm harmless. Then came the biological arch. Amber light spilled over her like warm sunlight, humming gently for long seconds before cutting off. The screen in front of the operator stayed black. No pulse line, no hologram, no polite beep, just silence. The officer blinked, antenna twitching as if to shake off what he was seeing. He tapped the console, frowned, and looked back at her. Ma'am, could you step through again? Alara raised a brow, lips quaking into a smirk. What? You think I left my heartbeat back on the ship? She shrugged and walked through again. The arch hummed, flickered, and died. Still nothing. Behind her, the line of travelers began to grumble, restless. Somewhere back there, a tentacled merchant clicked in annoyance. Alara folded her arms, suddenly very aware that the silence from the scanner was louder than all the noise around her. That was the moment the air shifted, the routine broke. A place where nothing ever went wrong had just stumbled into something it couldn't explain. And Alara Quinn, a tired pilot just looking for a bed, had become the center of it. The officer's fingers tapped faster across the console, his expression shifting from polite indifference to the kind of tight-lipped anxiety bureaucrats got when the manual didn't have an answer. He cleared his throat, antenna twitching nervously. Let's try this one more time, please. Alara sighed dramatically, earning another impatient click from the creature behind her in line. Sure, third time's the charm, right? She stepped back, strolled through the arch again, and held her arms out wide as if she were on stage. The amber glow washed over her, hummed for 4 seconds, then blinked out into nothing. The display remained stubbornly blank. The officer, his nameplate read Calvaire, junior immigration officer, looked like he'd just been handed a live plasma grenade. He tapped the panel harder, muttering, "This doesn't make sense. It's not showing respiration, no cardiac rhythm, no neural signals, nothing at all." Alara leaned an elbow on his desk, grinning. So, officially dead. Because if that's the case, I'm going to need a refund on the docking fee. Pretty sure corpses don't pay landing taxes. Kale shot her a look somewhere between panic and disbelief. He pulled a small handheld pad from the side of the console and set it on the counter. Place your hand here. Direct vital sign check. No possibility of miscalibration. She pressed her palm flat against it. For a moment, the pad flickered, then displayed a perfect flat line, no peaks, no valleys. Just a thin green line stretching across the screen. Kale whispered. Impossible. His blue skin had gone pale at the edges. A faint green tint creeping in. Alara raised an eyebrow. Buddy, I'm talking to you. I walked in here. I even stood still long enough to let your overpriced Christmas lights shine on me. I'm alive. She tapped the pad with her free hand. Does that say otherwise? Maybe your toy's broken. But Kale wasn't hearing her. He was scrolling through diagnostics, cross-checking systems, and rerunning code. Sweat tore the alien equivalent of it beaded at his temple. Every other passenger today scanned normally. Corvin traders, Zelthrani envoys, even a crystalline collective. You're the only anomaly. From the back of the line, someone barked, "Hurry up," followed by a chorus of clicks and hisses. The crowd was restless now, watching with open curiosity. Alara could feel eyes crawling over her. She leaned closer to Kale, her voice low and teasing. "Look, maybe your scanner just doesn't speak human. Ever think of that?" Kale froze, fingers hovering above the console. He blinked at her. "Human? Could you spell that?" Her grin faltered. "Human. Seriously, you don't know." Kale was already typing furiously, pulling up database after database. The screen flashed, "No results found." Secondary database, "No results." Tertiary registry, "No results." He looked up at her slowly, antenna trembling. "According to the system, your species doesn't exist." The words hung in there like a dropped blade, sharp and final. The crowd went quiet, even the tentacled merchant falling still. Alara forced a smile, though her stomach twisted. "Great," she said, her voice dry as desert sand. "Guess that means you can't charge me for a hotel room either." But in Kel's wide, horrified eyes, she saw something else, a fear that this was only the beginning of a much bigger problem. Two uniformed attendants appeared within minutes, summoned by Kel's increasingly frantic signals. Their steps were brisk, their faces unreadable, and without a word they gestured for Alara to follow. The murmurs of the waiting line rose into a low tide of speculation as she was escorted away from the concourse. Down a side corridor pulsing with strips of sterile white light, Alara walked with her hands in her pockets, boots clicking against the deck. "So let me guess. This is the part where you either lock me up, dissect me, or," as she tilted her head at Kale, who trailed nervously behind, "offer me a free spa treatment with all this attention." Kale muttered, "It's protocol. The scanners never fail like this. We need secondary verification." The secondary verification turned out to be a medical wing 3 levels below the concourse. The door hissed open to reveal a chamber that felt more like a laboratory than a clinic. Sleek walls shimmered with embedded circuitry, and articulated arms hung from the ceiling, each tipped with scanners that glowed faintly as though hungry for data. Holographic displays hovered midair, scrolling constant readouts of other patients' heartbeats, thermal signatures, neurological maps. Every screen was alive with color and sound until Alara stepped inside. The displays nearest her flickered, then went flat. Lines of green dropped into silence, as though she were a void sucking life from the instruments. "See," Alara said, waving a hand under a floating sensor. "I'm a walking off switch. Want me to fix your lighting bill while I'm at it?" A new voice cut through the room, calm but edged with curiosity. "Fascinating." A tall, silver-skinned figure emerged from behind a console. His uniform was crisp, his movements deliberate. He looked at Alara with oversized eyes that blinked too slowly, as though processing her not just as a passenger but as a puzzle. "Dr. Thalen Ricks," Kale stammered, almost in relief. "This is the anomaly I told you about." Dr. Ricks studied her the way one might study a strange artifact dredged up from a forgotten ruin. "Step onto the examination platform, please." The platform was a simple circle etched into the floor. Alara stepped up, arms crossed, watching as the ceiling arms descended. Beams of light crimson, sapphire, emerald cascaded across her, rippling through their like curtains of energy. She felt a faint prickling sensation, like static against her skin. Ricks's console filled with streams of data, then just as quickly flattened into nothing. His brows furrowed. He switched modes, cycling through what he named aloud: electromagnetic resonance, quantum field mapping, thermal imaging, neural analysis. All negative. Kale leaned forward. "But that's impossible. Every life form registers on at least one of those." Alara gave a slow clap. "Congratulations, Doctor. I've officially beaten your machines. Do I get a medal, or at least a hotel voucher?" But Ricks wasn't listening to her. His long fingers danced over the console, pulling up old logs. "This is not the first time," he murmured. Alara's smirk faded. "Excuse me." Ricks rotated one of the displays toward them. On it scrolled hundreds of entries flagged as incomplete biological verification. 847 cases, Ricks said quietly. "All within the last standard year." Kel's eyes widened. 800. His voice cracked. Rix nodded slowly, his silver skin reflecting the cold glow of the data. Passengers who passed through the station. Invisible to our scanners. Written off as equipment errors. But they weren't errors. They were consistent, identical, the same anomaly repeating. Ilara stared at the glowing numbers, her throat suddenly dry. She'd walked into Sidonia Prime expecting a stamp on her passport. Instead, she was staring at evidence that she wasn't just a fluke. She wasn't the first. And she wouldn't be the last. Administrator Soren arrived like a storm wrapped in a uniform. Her entrance cut through the hum of the med bay, her boots clicking in perfect rhythm against the polished floor. She was shorter than Dr. Rix but carried herself like she owned the entire station, silver insignia gleaming on her collar. Expression sharp enough to slice through steel. Kale straightened instantly, antenna stiff with nerves. Administrator, the scans, she silenced him with a flick of her hand and turned her gaze on Ilara. Is it an anomaly? Her tone made the words sound less like a description and more like a crime. Ilara gave her a lazy salute. Anomaly, tourists, take your pick. I was just hoping for a hotel check-in, not a galactic inquisition. Soren ignored her and stalked toward Dr. Rix's console. Show me. Rix hesitated, then rotated the display. Hundreds of entries glowed across the holographic screen, each tagged with the same cold phrase incomplete biological verification. Soren's eyes narrowed. Explain. It's not equipment failure, Rix said, his voice oddly reverent. The anomalies are consistent. The same flatline pattern every time. The same absence of life signs. This is systemic, Kale whispered. 847. In 1 year alone, the administrator's face drained of color, her lips pressing into a thin line. Do you understand what you're suggesting? That our immigration system has been processing ghosts, not ghosts, Rix corrected softly. He turned his oversized eyes on Ilara. Humans. Soren's gaze snapped back to her. What species did you say you were? Human, Ilara replied, her voice firm now. HUMN. Surprised you've never heard of us. Soren stabbed a command into the console. The station's master database unfurled like a galaxy of text and records. She searched primary classifications, secondary indexes, even obscure xenobiology archives. Every query came back the same, no results found. That's impossible, she muttered. Is it? Rix's voice had a strange edge now, half awe, half obsession. What if there isn't a flaw in the database? What if humans were deliberately excluded? The room went still. Ilara's brows rose. You're telling me someone went out of their way to pretend we don't exist? Rix tapped a final sequence, and the screen flickered, revealing something buried deep in the system's core code. Not random error strings, but deliberate scripting. Ancient directives written in an archaic programming language, older than the station itself. Symbols glowed in pale gold across the display, shards of a forgotten logic. Soren's voice dropped to a whisper. What is that? A lock, Rix said. His silver skin shimmered in the light of the code. An intentional barrier. Someone, long before us, instructed these systems to ignore one biological signature. To render an entire species invisible. Kale staggered back a step, antenna trembling. But why? Rix's oversized eyes gleamed. That is the question, isn't it? This isn't a glitch. This isn't a mistake. This is design. Ilara let out a low whistle. So let me get this straight. You're perfect. All-seeing machines didn't just miss me. They were programmed to. She crossed her arms. Which means someone, somewhere, really didn't want you to notice humans. The administrator clenched her jaw, staring at the alien script. For the first time, her voice cracked with something that sounded like fear. If this is true, then this is not just a technical oversight. This is a galactic crisis. And for the first time, Ilara felt a chill creep down her spine. Not because she was invisible to their machines, but because someone had wanted it that way. And whoever they were, they'd been planning it for centuries. The summons went out across Sidonia Prime like a distress beacon. And by the next cycle, the highest chamber of the station, a vast council hall of obsidian glass and suspended holograms, was crowded with officials. Representatives of 5 species ringed the oval table, each one radiating their own brand of nervous authority. At the head sat Administrator Soren, jaw tight, silver skin dimmed to a pale gray. To her left hovered a crystalline being whose body refracted light into 1,000 shards. To her right, a hulking, armored creature clicked and hissed in its native tongue, the sound rattling across the chamber until the translator finally caught up. Dr. Rix stood at the center of the room, hands clasped behind his back, Alara at his side like a very unwilling exhibit. Kale lurked near the doors, antenna twitching as though he wanted to melt into the wall. "This is the situation," Soren began, voice steady despite the weight in the room. "A passenger identifying herself as human has passed through our security undetected. Not merely by one scanner, but by all systems. Further review has revealed hundreds of similar anomalies over the last year alone." Gasps, clinks, and murmurs rippled around the table. The crystalline representative pulsed with a sound like shattering glass. "Impossible. Biological detection protocols are universal." "Universal," Rix echoed with a thin smile. "Until now." He tapped a command, and the council's holographic array filled the chamber with a cascade of glowing numbers. 847 undetected entries. "And that's just this station." The hulking, armored delegate slammed a claw against the table, sending a metallic clang echoing through the hall. "Then your systems are flawed." "Replace them." "Not flawed," Rix corrected. "Tampered with." The code itself bears markers of intentional design. Someone long ago wanted humans to remain invisible. All eyes turned to Alara. She raised both hands and shrugged. "Hey, don't look at me. I didn't write your spooky space code. I barely manage my ship's coffee machine." A ripple of uneasy laughter broke the tension for a heartbeat, but the silence that followed was heavier still. The crystalline was flickering dimly. "If this is true, then we have processed an unknown species." Without oversight, Soren's voice cut through. "It's worse than that. Dr. Rix, show them the trade logs." Rix keyed another command. The holograms shifted, displaying streams of economic records, cargo manifests, transaction slips, merchant contracts. Thousands of them. Kel's voice cracked as he read the highlighted figures. 12,000 undocumented trades in the past 5 years. 4,000 specifically tied to humans. The room erupted. The armored delegates clicked stern furious, while the crystalline representative pulsed erratically, their light fragmenting in panic. Soren slammed her palm on the console. "Order!" Alara whistled softly, leaning back in her chair. "Wow, 4,000. That's a lot of ghost business. Guess we're better at commerce than you thought." "Better," Soren snapped. Her voice carried enough force to silence even the armored delegate. "Those transactions account for nearly 20% of Sidonia Prime's total trade volume." The chamber froze. 20%, Rix repeated, his voice tinged with awe. 1/5 of our economy, conducted by beings we cannot even detect." Alara tilted her head, smirking despite the chill running through her veins. "So what you're saying is, without us, your market might have collapsed years ago." No one laughed this time. For the first time since stepping off her ship, Alara felt the weight of the revelation pressing down on her. She wasn't just an anomaly. She was a crack in the foundation of the entire galactic order, and the council had just realized how wide that crack already was. The council chamber vibrated with overlapping voices, a storm of fear and outrage bouncing off the obsidian walls. Holograms flickered under the stress of too many commands shouted at once. The crystalline delegate's body fractured light in erratic bursts. The armored representative slammed both fists onto the table, denting the alloy. Dr. Rix raised his voice above the chaos. "Silence." His normally measured tone cracked like thunder. "There is more." The chamber stilled. Every gaze locked on him as he pulled a separate data shard from his coat and slid it into the console. The holograms shifted, lines of code streaming upward in shimmering golden glyphs, alien symbols older than the council itself. "This," Rix said, pointing to the ancient script, "was buried beneath the system's architecture. Not part of any recognized programming. It predates the station, predates even the foundation of the Interstellar Council." Administrator Soren's lips parted. "Predates." Rix nodded. "This is no accident. A deliberate directive, written centuries, perhaps millennia ago. An order to hide one specific biological signature. To erase humans from the galactic record." The words hit like a detonation. The crystalline delegate dimmed to near darkness. The armored representative hissed something guttural, a sound the translator refused to render. Kale, still hovering near the door, looked like his antenna might snap off from trembling. Soren gripped the edge of the table, knuckles pale. "You're saying some ancient power decided to bury an entire species in silence?" that every scan, every registry, every record was programmed to ignore them. Yes, Rix replied, his oversized eyes gleaming. Not a flaw. A cover-up. Laura leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with a crooked smile. Well, that explains why I never get invited to the big galactic parties. Guess the universe has been ghosting us on purpose. Her flippancy only deepened the tension. The delegates erupted again, voices sharp with panic. Who would do this? What could they fear from humans? How many more are already among us? Rix let them rage for a moment before dropping the final blade. It gets worse. The lock wasn't designed to last forever. It is decaying, slowly, but surely. That is why the errors are surfacing now. The veil is unraveling. The chamber fell silent again, the weight of his words pressing into every corner. Soren's voice was hoarse. If the veil collapses, then every human presence will be revealed overnight. Rix finished for her. Every trade, every interaction, every undocumented colony. And the galaxy will realize that a species it has ignored for millennia has been living right under its nose. The crystalline delegate pulsed faintly, the light stuttering like a failing star. And if the veil was created, it was for a reason. To contain them, to hide them. If it breaks, then we discover why they were hidden in the first place. The armored representative growled. Laura kicked one boot up onto the edge of the table, grinning despite the knot in her stomach. Sounds like a big reveal party, and I wasn't even planning on throwing one. But hey, at least now you'll finally get to know what you've been missing. Her casual tone didn't fool anyone. The truth was heavy, pressing, terrifying. Somewhere out there, an ancient intelligence had made the decision to erase humanity. And its long-forgotten curtain was beginning to fall. Rix's gaze lingered on Alara, as if she were both specimen and prophecy. The question is not whether humans will be revealed, he said, voice low and certain. The question is what happens to the galaxy when they are. And in the silence that followed, every delegate in that chamber realized the same chilling truth. The veil wasn't just breaking. It was breaking now. The council chamber was suffocating with tension, the kind that made the air feel heavier, like every breath was borrowed. Holograms of collapsing codes still hovered above the table, the golden glyphs pulsing like a heartbeat long thought dead. Delegates whispered furiously in their native tongues, fear dripping from every syllable. Administrator Soren pressed both palms against the table. This is catastrophic. If word spreads, trade collapses. If the veil breaks, panic will sweep the spiral. Entire alliances could fracture. Sounds exhausting. Alara cut in. She dropped her boots from the table and leaned forward, planting her elbows on the polished surface. Her tone was sharp but carried that playful edge she'd wielded since the scanners first failed. So here's my counteroffer. Stop panicking about the fate of the galaxy, and maybe just stamp my damn passport so I can find a bed. I didn't come here to rewrite your history books. For a moment, silence. Then a ripple of disbelief, almost laughter, but strangled by the sheer gravity of the moment. Kale, half hidden near the door, muttered under his breath. She's serious. Lalara straightened, locking eyes with Soren. Look, I don't know who or what buried humans in your systems, but if that veil's falling, you don't have much time. You can either figure it out without dragging me into your bureaucratic meltdown, or you can waste more hours interrogating me while your precious galaxy eats itself alive. Your choice. Her words cut through the panic like a blade. For the first time, the mighty council looked less like rulers of a star-spanning alliance and more like frightened children who had just discovered the dark wasn't empty after all. Soren's jaw worked, grinding against words she couldn't quite form. At last, she gave a clipped order to Kale, process her papers, quietly. Kale blinked. But, do it. The young officer scrambled to comply, fumbling with his datapad until the immigration stamp pulsed across Alara's ID file. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. In a hall filled with the most powerful beings of Sidonia Prime, the solution was to pretend business as usual. Alara plucked the stamp pad from Kel's hands and winked. See, was that so hard? Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a date with a cheap hotel pillow and maybe a drink that doesn't glow. She turned to leave, boots echoing against the obsidian floor. The delegates buzzing in frantic whispers behind her. She looked, for all the galaxy, like a woman walking away from chaos she had no intention of cleaning up. But just before the doors hissed shut, the holograms flickered one last time. Golden glyphs surged across the chamber's walls, brighter and bolder than before. Words translated themselves in jagged bursts of code, spilling into every language at once. The veil is failing. The hidden return. The delegates gasp, their voices overlapping in raw panic. Laura, already stepping into the corridor, paused long enough to glance back at the glowing message. A slow smile spread across her face. Well, she murmured to herself, that's going to be fun. And with that, she disappeared into the hum of the station, leaving the council reeling, the galaxy trembling, and the ancient warning burning bright and open wound that promised the story was only just beginning. So what do you think? If you were Laura Quinn, standing in front of a galactic council that just discovered your entire species was deliberately erased from history, would you walk away like she did, or demand answers? I'd love to hear your take, so drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed this wild ride through the unknown, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with a fellow sci-fi fan who loves a good twist. The galaxy's secrets are only just beginning to unravel. Don't miss what's coming next.